Thank you for tuning in to Matters of the Heart Radio Live with your host, biblical counselor and author, Ms. Wendy. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in your player to send us a message. Now, here's your host, Ms. Wendy.
Hello and welcome to Matters of the Heart Radio Show with me, your host, Wendy Torres. It's such a joy to have the opportunity to spend time with you, my friend, today. Wherever you may be listening from when you hear this recording, I want you to know that I've prayed that God would touch your heart through the course of this show, and I hope that you keep yourself tuned in as we talk today about depression, whether it's us experiencing it directly and personally, or if we love someone who is struggling and suffering with depression. Depression is serious and depression is real. And the idea that depression does not impact or influence the life of a Christian is so far from the truth. Being Christian does not mean that you are immune from depression or feeling really, really sad. Therefore, today we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk practically and spiritually about how we can overcome the terrible, difficult pit of depression and come up out of it. I don't know where you're listening from today, and I know that this is going to go to a number of different places, but we're recording from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex here in Texas, in the United States, and it's kind of gray and overcast where we're at today, and it's interesting because that's kind of how people feel when they are going through depression, but on the inside it's gray, it's overcast, the sun doesn't feel like it's shining. And today I hope to be that ray of sunshine in your life if you're listening, or if you're trying to love someone who's struggling with depression and you're looking to see how you can help them. What do you do? Depression is serious because oftentimes in extreme cases, and sometimes it's hard to tell if your case is extreme or not, it does lead to suicide. There are many people who commit suicide who have struggled with depression, and maybe it's been untreated or misdiagnosed. Maybe they've come across as being blue from time to time, but they really haven't shared openly or vulnerably with anyone the depth of sorrow that they experience or the amount of hopelessness or helplessness that they feel. Suffering from depression is more than just feeling kind of blue, and it can come through a variety of ways. It can come because of circumstances. Maybe something has happened, like you've lost your job, or there's an emotional upset in your family. Perhaps you're going through a divorce, or you're having something happen with your children. It could have to do with your health, with your finances, with your dreams. So in other words, it can be circumstantial, or it can be related to a chemical imbalance, which is not necessarily triggered by something sad happening. But it is something that needs to be addressed. I was looking at something that my producer Christine showed me before we started the show, and it's absolutely accurate. It says that sometimes people think that loneliness just feels like sadness, like I was talking about earlier, feeling kind of blue. But actually, I really like how they describe it here. They say that it's a sense of hopelessness and self-loathing, isolation, anxiety, sadness, guilt, and the emotional equivalent of watching paint dry. Why? Because it's slow. That's the thing about depression, is it's unlike anxiety, where you may feel an anxiety alone. You may feel like your heart is racing and you need to do things really fast. Depression does not feel like that. It feels very slow, and it sometimes feels like it takes a long, long time to come out of it. So where are you listening from? I'd like to hear from you. I hope you go to my website and let me know where you're listening from, mattersoftheheartradio.org. I'd like to know how the show is impacting your life. If you wouldn't mind checking in and letting me know, I would really appreciate that. Depression is serious, and the last studies that I heard said that suicide was ranked number 10 among the causes of death for adults in America. That's sad. That says that it's past material wealth or comfort, because America, in comparison to other countries, is a very prosperous country. And if you do not have employment, we live in a very blessed country where the government will give you money, help you have somewhere to live, buy groceries. It's not the ideal state, but you're by far not in the same boat as others who would suffer in other countries if they did not have the resources that we have available. So that would be the really difficult times of life that someone may experience that. But even the wealthy take their lives. I'm sure if you were to pause and contemplate for a moment, even people who are famous, who have tons and tons of money, choose to exit life at their own hands, at their own expense, because money is not the antidote for suicide and for happiness. It is not it. So today we want to talk about it and really raise some awareness to that. We all need a good quality of life. And I want you to make a difference with your life. If you are someone and you feel like, well, I really can't relate to that. And I know that there are some people who really, truly feel like they cannot. Maybe they have an episode from time to time when something happens where they feel down for a few days, but they really can't relate to feeling like they are in a pit and wallowing and they cannot get out. Yet others of you are listening and you understand when I say you feel like you are in a pit, a deep, deep pit when you are suffering with depression. You understand. Today's show is for you as well, because today I want to help you come out. So I've thought as I've gone through some difficult things in my own life, and some loved ones have been through difficult things as well, I read this story in the Bible and I had to question if depression is part of this story. And the Bible doesn't tell us emphatically yes or no. However, I do think that it is worth considering. So I'm going to read to you from John chapter 5. It reads this way. This is about the healing at the pool. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." And then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." And at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. Now, I'm going to stop right there. And I want to focus on a couple of things in this story. It says here in verse 3 that a great number of disabled people used to lie there. There's something that people underestimate, and I'm not trying to talk about abusing the system or being over dramatic about mental illness, but it very much can be a disability in people's lives. And to say that it's something that they can just snap out of really does them a disservice, and it does you a disservice as well, because you're going to miss out on an opportunity of loving people who have a lot of love to give, though they may suffer, and even sometimes be very, very difficult to get along with. I wonder if some of the people who were disabled at that time even were suffering from mental illness. It doesn't say that. It highlights the physical infirmities. But mental infirmity and mental disabilities can be just as handicapping, especially when you don't want to get up and live life and just enjoy walking, enjoying your regular activities. The other thing I want to point out is that this man had been laying there and kept laying there and kept laying there. And at a certain point, Jesus had to ask him, "Do you want to be well?" And if you're struggling with depression, if you're in the pit, someone can ask you that, and it can be, you can get a very flippant kind of remark of whatever. Sometimes it's hard to believe that you can come up out of the depression. But that's not true. Just because it feels that way does not necessarily mean that it's true. The truth is we cannot always believe our feelings. Someone that I highly respect said before, when someone asked them if they enjoyed doing this and that and the other, the lady said, I've stopped asking myself whether or not I enjoy it. I just see it as my responsibility, and I get up and do it because I know God has called me to do this. And there is a certain point in time when you have to just say, it doesn't really matter if I feel like it or not. I need to get up and do it. And whether you realize it or not, if you are struggling with depression, living with that mindset is one of the very best things you can do. And loving someone and living with someone who is suffering from depression, that is also a very good mindset for you to help carry on and to live out of, though they may not want to do anything. Just because they don't want to does not mean that they shouldn't be encouraged to get up, take a shower, to go to work, to get out, to go for a walk. They need help fighting that. Yet at the same time, there's a balance to be had, because you can't actually do it for them. If you are their partner, if you are walking life alongside of them, you can encourage and you can help. But the truth is that you can't make them. But encouraging them is definitely the right thing to do. Encouraging them with a lot of patience, because most of the time they don't care to hear what you have to say. But just because they don't care to hear what you have to say, by far does not mean that you should not extend your hand to try and help. The exception there would be if you yourself are not in a good state of mind, and you yourself are going through difficulties, or you suffer from depression and you feel like you're doing well trying to tread and swim in the water yourself, and trying to help them may bring you down, and you could both be lost in a very dark, dark abyss. It's okay to help, and it's okay to draw a line where you say, I love you, but I can't go there with you. That doesn't mean that abandonment has to take place, though. I want you to remember that prayer is effective. The prayers of the righteous are effective. They accomplish much. We know that this is true. The Word of God tells us this. And the other thing is, it's great to encourage them. If you know someone who suffers from this regularly, and they cry a lot, they're really struggling, they're really having a hard time, and honestly, there's not a lot that's happening in their life that's really bad, that's current. It may be things from the past, but things from the past 3, 5, 10 years ago shouldn't have someone crying every day now. Encouraging them to seek medical help is wise, is loving, is kind, and is good. There's no need for you to feel like you're bad for encouraging them to get that medical help, because medication has its place here. When we're looking at circumstances or situations like that, and it's not circumstantial, they need help because their brain is not communicating effectively within itself, so that they can really enjoy a good quality of life. Now, joining me here, trying to look at the whatever is all has to be looked at. Don't even ask me. See, I can't even say. To keep the sound going and to keep the show moving smoothly is my producer, Christine. So, Christine, I'm talking about depression today. And, depression is serious. And oftentimes people think that being Christian should be enough. If you're spiritually mature enough, you won't feel as sad. And that is simply not true. Yet, today, someone may be listening and they may be having that same kind of thought. They may be thinking, well, if I just prayed more, or if I just read my Bible more, I wouldn't be sad. Well, you may not be as sad, but if it's something chemical, the truth is, Christine, to our listener, it's not going to take it away completely. Depression is serious. It doesn't last forever, although it can last way too long if it's left untreated. But when you love someone who is suffering from depression, or someone's going through a hard time, I really want to encourage you to stop and pause and evaluate, is this circumstantial or is this more than that? So I'm sure you've lived life for a while, and knowing that you have friends, so on and so forth, can you relate to seeing someone or loving someone who's been in that really difficult state?
I think what comes to mind when you're talking about depression and you're talking about, the thought that comes to my mind first is for those that are not in that position and that are dealing with somebody that is just recognizing that. If you have somebody that has a physical infirmity, it's easy to see that they need help if they're, limping
That's
along,
right.
or they're in a wheelchair or whatever.
Right.
So,
and, that's a really good point. I say that in my office a lot. Many of you may know that I'm a counselor. Some of you may not. But mental illness is just like that. We know to be compassionate and to be helpful to someone if they have a cast on their leg or if they are in a wheelchair. We can physically see the evidence of something hurting them or their need for extra assistance. Mental illness is not always the same way, and depending on what you're dealing with, someone may be really good at hiding it for a little while, and when they go home they allow themselves to be who they truly are or how they may truly feel. But mental illness is just like that. You're absolutely right, because we can't actually see it unless we see maybe the crying or something like that.
and I think that may be a little bit of a misnomer too. Not that tears and crying and sadness isn't a part of it, but the parts of depression that maybe are not so obvious, such as some of the things on your list where you talked, the low energy, or the inability to express emotion well or connect or communicate with somebody. And there are a lot of maybe habits that just seem like, they're just kind of checked out, or they're just kind of off doing their own thing, or they're just lounging around in bed, where it's maybe not as obvious as the tears and the crying and the sobbing, but that may be, taken collectively, maybe symptoms and signs that you're overlooking.
Sure, and I think that because sometimes we may be unsure as to what's happening, one of the best ways to find out is to talk it out. Whether you are the person suffering with the deep sense of sorrow, or you are the loved one loving someone who you feel like you just can't reach them. Even if you're holding them, you feel like you still can't quite reach them. Talking it out is one of the very best things you can do. And they may not be able to say, yes, I'm depressed, or no, I'm not, because sometimes that's not something that people feel really comfortable talking about because they perceive it as a weakness. Yet in your love, it's okay to say, you sound depressed to me. You don't sound like yourself. That would be a really good thing to say to someone. Or, I've noticed that you've been really quiet lately. Is everything okay? Those sort of questions to help prompt a deeper conversation about what they're going through is a really, really good idea. So let's stop there. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about how we can overcome, or how we can get out of the pit called depression.
Are you suffering from a past hurt? Lingering pains can inhibit your potential to be all that God has in store for you in your life. As a biblical counselor, Miss Wendy has written Healing Waters, a 21-day workbook which offers well-thought-out steps to emotional recovery. Making use of hands-on activities, prayers, and meditation on Scripture, Miss Wendy helps build faith and develop patterns that establish lifelong vitality. Why not take that step to the healthy, whole, God-filled individual you're meant to be? Go to mattersoftheheartradio.org to order your copy today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org. You're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with your host, Miss Wendy. We'd love to hear from you today. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in the player located on mattersoftheheartradio.org, or you can also reach out to us on our Facebook page at Matters of the Heart Radio. Now, here's your host, Miss Wendy.
So if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show as we're talking about depression today on Matters of the Heart Radio. We're talking about what it looks like and how we can come out of that deep, dark pit of depression where life just does not feel worth living anymore. It is not enjoyable. It feels very dark and very gray. The Lord wants to help us out of those very desperate, dark places. Let us not underestimate or mistake that. He absolutely wants us to enjoy the life that He's given us, and He wants us to experience freedom. Sometimes we're going through these really dark places and these dark times in life because something very sad has happened. Legitimately, you have a reason to be crying. I want to say to you today, it is okay to cry. It is okay to feel the pain of grief. If you've lost someone, whether it's through death or a relational breakup of any sort, it's okay to cry. As a matter of fact, you're healthier when you cry and you allow the emotions out. You know, there is a research study out there that not all tears are the same, and I found this very, very fascinating. They have found that tears that are released through laughter or sorrow are very different. When there is deep pain in the heart and tears are a consequence of that, there are actually toxins found in the tears. And that is absolutely fascinating to me because the only way that those toxins are going to come out is through the tears. And there is a place for tears. Tears really are healing, more healing than you think, more than just an old saying that people say. No, tears really do cleanse your soul. So I want you to know that it is absolutely okay to cry. But if you get to the point where you are crying and it's more than a week or two, it's probably time to reach out for some help. Definitely if it's a month and you're still feeling really down, something has to change and you need to get some help so that you can overcome the sorrow that you're going through. Sorrow is very normal where grief is concerned, especially through death or a breakup. But really, you should see some relief over time. It shouldn't be getting worse, and it should not remain the same. If it remains the same or gets worse, then we know we're dealing with some depression that probably needs to be medically treated in order to overcome and to get out of that hump. So I want you to know that crying is okay, but the objective is not to stay in that place where you are consumed with sorrow. God wants to reach out His hand to you. And Jesus, just like He did with this man who was hurting and paralyzed, if you're paralyzed in sorrow, Jesus too wants to reach out His hand of hope to you and say, come on, get up. It's time. There comes a certain point in time when you yourself, no one else can decide it for you, but you yourself have to say, yes, I want to be better. Now, you may utter that with the faintest whisper, and if so, that's okay. But ultimately, no one can make the decision for you completely. But there has to come a point in time where you say to yourself, self, it's time to get better. Some people listening, I know, are alone and sad. And maybe you can't find quite the same purpose for living before as you once knew. But do you know that tomorrow is in God's hands? And if He didn't have a purpose for you to be here, He wouldn't have you here. And though things may look discouraging, they may look black, they may look dark, and you can't see a glimmer of hope, that does not mean that it's real and that there is no hope. I can think of good times in my life that I've really, really enjoyed. And if I'd given up years prior, how would I ever have experienced those good times? I think about, even now at this moment, I think of my mom as she's experiencing, after years of singleness, experiencing love again and really happy and singing. She sends me all of these love songs. She's just so funny in this relationship that she's in, not in a bad way, but a very good way. Yet I can think of times when she was so full of sorrow and thought, it would never happen to her. She was getting too old. You really don't know what the future holds, but if you give up, you'll never find out. See, God has a purpose for all of us, and the purpose is good. Jeremiah 29:11, so many people quote that, but how many of us really live with that as an anchor in our souls of truth? When God says that He knows. He doesn't guess. He knows the plans that He has for us, and they are good, not evil, to give us a future and a hope. And though life at the moment may seem hopeless, and if the person you love is feeling this way, just really take heed to the words that I'm saying, because maybe they're not listening to the show, but you can take some of the things that you're learning and share it with them. Things may seem hopeless right now. They may feel very alone right now. But that's just right now. That does not guarantee or mean it's going to be that way 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 weeks from now. God is alive, and He is on the throne, and He is able to do the impossible. Life will be good again. What that goodness looks like, oftentimes we don't know. We can want to quit, but today is the day of saying, and to be told very lovingly, you can't quit. That's the bottom line. You cannot quit. There's too much ahead for you, and you have so much that the world needs to, the world has so much. Help me. You have so much to offer that the world really needs right now. And if you give up, you'll never know the satisfaction of bringing that smile and that element of hope and help to someone else. God never wastes anything. And everything works out for our good when we love God. Everything works out for our good. Christine?
How important is it to have a support group and not just your spouse or your partner, your close friend, just a support group that understands what you're going through, and even for your spouse or your husband that isn't going through, or friend that isn't going through this, to have their own group of support and friends and family. What can you do in that support group to help your friend to push through this?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that they can do? Because I think it feels pretty helpless if you're seeing it or even being in it.
Right. Well, that's a pretty loaded question. I think that you had 3 of them in there. Mm-hmm. So, tell me the first question again.
Just talking about support group or group of
for the individual
for the
suffering
individual.
with depression first. Okay, so yes, the hard part about it is that when someone's suffering from depression, they usually don't trust a lot of people with what they're going through, and there's usually just a select small few, and I would say that's very, very normal for that person to not have tons of people. It doesn't mean they don't have a lot of people in their life, but as far as those that they would allow to intimately know them and know their struggle, it's probably going to be a very small group. But if there's more than 1 or 2, if there are 3, 4, or 5, which I would say is a really good sized group, collaborating together is a good thing. I would say it's a great thing. I would say that sometimes people can become discouraged because maybe they only have one person to reach out to. Okay, I get that, but it's really by choice. The person suffering from depression has at their disposal the option to invite anyone into their pain that they choose. So is it beneficial to have a support group? Yes. Is it typical that they're going to have a lot of people there? No. Well, those who are in the support group need support themselves? Yes. Now, there is where I say yes. The supporters need support because then they are the best helpers out there. Well, we're going to wrap up the show at this part for today. I hope that you tune in tomorrow as I talk about the how-tos and coming out of the pit of depression if you're suffering or you have a loved one who's suffering and you want to see them enjoying the fullness of life.
You're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with your host, Miss Wendy. We'd love to hear from you today. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in the player located on mattersoftheheartradio.org, or you can also reach out to us on our Facebook page at Matters of the Heart Radio. Now, here's your host, Miss Wendy.
Hello, you're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with me, your host, Wendy Torres. Some of you are listening for an hour-long show, and I'm so grateful that you are joining us through Victory Radio or whoever you may be listening to, whichever station you're listening to. And some of you are tuning in for our half-hour show. We're going to pick up today at this moment talking about depression. Depression is so real, and it's vital that we become educated as to how we can help loved ones come out of depression and how we can get out of it if it's us that are, if we're going through it ourselves. Going through it yourself and trying to pick yourself up out of that pit can be one of the most difficult things that you'll go through. Whether you're suffering with sorrow and depression that is based on circumstances, it's circumstantial, you've lost someone that you've loved, a relationship, a career, a social status, depression can be triggered a number of different ways. And it can be circumstantial. In other words, you are feeling really down because you lost your job. You no longer have that sense of routine in your life or purpose. And knowing that financially you're going to be struggling can legitimately put you into a sense of depression. And then there is another kind of depression, which is more chemical. It has stuff to do with a chemical imbalance in someone's brain. And that is not necessarily triggered by something circumstantial. There may be something that flares up from time to time, but nothing really big has happened that would really cause the person to feel sad. They just wake up and they feel really down. Now, one thing I want to say is that just because you wake up feeling that way does not mean that you have to own it. Okay? Sometimes we fail to realize that we have the opportunity and the ability, much less to say the responsibility, to decide what kind of day we're going to have. Just because we feel sad does not mean we have to give into it. And that is one of the greatest keys to depression, is learning how to fight that pull. It feels like gravity. It just pulls you down. But gaining some tools in which you can fight that is essential. Just because you wake up feeling that sadness does not mean you have to just give into it and go along with it and say, okay, yes, it's going to be a terrible, awful day. I quit. I give up. I haven't even got out of my bed yet. Regardless of which reason, whichever way path may be leading or triggering the depression in your life, whether it's circumstantial or chemical, you do not have to give into it. And it's important that you know that. You can determine to live that day in your life opposite of how you feel. It may take your feelings a little while to catch up, but they will catch up. Joining me today is Christine, who helps produce the show and does the technical things for me to keep things rolling. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, Christine, we're talking about depression, and depression, oftentimes people can wake up. I've felt this way plenty of times. I can't say that it's a chemical thing, but sometimes you just feel like you've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. Not angry or grumpy, because that's not really kind of my bent, the angry, grumpy side, but I could feel a little bit more, somber or tired. One is probably because I have so many things going on, but just kind of feel like blah. You know, we're friends outside of the show, and I know, who knows how many times I've sent you this text and do not answer the question. Don't answer the question on air. That I've sent you a text and been like, I feel blah, right? Because there are times that I feel like that. But it's important that we learn that we do not have to succumb to that sense of blah, but the choice is always ours.
Well, I do wake up grumpy and moody, and I've woken up not feeling my best either, feeling down, and grumpy and moody is definitely a trigger that comes after it as well. But where does your, I think talking about the day that you choose to have instead of the day you're feeling like having, and I know that you talk about spending a lot of morning time in reading the Word and praying, and that sounds like it's a good habit anyway, I think, but it probably certainly a good self-care, psychology buzzword, self-care thing to do.
Sure.
When you're in a state that you're not, and I've heard a lot of people talk about the Psalms being a very comforting self-care thing.
They really are. I'll tell you what I know has helped me the most, and one thing I encourage my clients to do is to begin to really practice the presence of God. Because you see, in the presence of God is fullness of joy. The Word tells us that. And in the presence of God is peace. How do we know that peace is in the presence of God? Because Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father, and Jesus is the Prince of Peace. So we know in the presence of God there is both peace and joy. Trying to get to that place when you're feeling really down and things seem bleak or things seem discouraging is the challenge. But just because it's challenging in the society and the time that we live in does not mean quit and give up. This is not a drive-through. You get to place your order. I want to be happy. 2 minutes later, they give you the bag out of the window and you have it and you drive on. No, this is not that way. This is something you actually have to process and walk out. So practicing the presence of God looks like this. You open up your own spiritual understanding to a certain degree to say, Lord, I need you. You begin to dialogue and commune with God and allow yourself in a very real way to experience, to be mindful of His presence. And the more you call Him to mind and the more you ask Him, Lord, call my attention back to you, draw me back to you as my mind begins to wander and drift, the more you're going to find that your thoughts are filled more with God and communing with Him than they are your problems and your worries. I love, love, love a book called Practicing the Presence of God, which is based around a way that Brother Lawrence, some of you may be familiar with him, lived his life. And he talked about cleaning the kitchen for the glory of God and learning to do every single little thing without complaining, with a discipline, and doing it all for the love of God. Is it hard? Yes, because your flesh and Satan himself want to destroy any element of happiness and crave, misery loves company. Yet, the Spirit of the Lord will always woo and draw you to the comfort of the Lord. And you're about to find out which one you've honestly been feeding more, your spirit or your flesh sometimes, when this comes up. If it's chemical, this is not necessarily the same, but the practice will still help you to overcome. Practicing the presence of God, being mindful of the Lord at all times, whether your thoughts are pleasing to Him, your speech is pleasing to Him, the work of your hands is pleasing to Him, just simply saying, I love you, thank you for loving me. That's it. Just acknowledging Him and spending more time being aware of His presence and knowing this, that in His presence is all of the love that you need. That may sound kind of cliche, but love isn't something that God does. Love is who God is. And love is such a powerful, powerful antidote for those very feelings and those very things that we were talking about earlier in the first half of the show that you feel when you're depressed. And that sense of worthlessness and guilt, love is a great remedy for that. The reality, too, those negative feelings of depression is this: people's words can only carry you so far. God's presence and His power can carry you all the way.
The beautiful practice that I've tried to take up oftentimes is to give thanks to God in all the little bitty things that happen in the day. And Just even that parking spot,
That's right.
oh, where am I going to get that park? I don't want to walk that far. And then all of a sudden there it comes. And just a little, thank you, Jesus, and it sounds silly because you think, oh, well, God doesn't really care about getting you a parking spot that close to the store, or even little things, but little bitty favors, little bitty graces in your life that you see come along, I think God's in everything, and
Absolutely.
so why not? I mean, you should be thanking Him anyway. So why not? Just for the little things, the little graces you find in your life, whether it just comes along or it's God's grace or whatever. I just acknowledge Him in all things in that, and it's been just a nice thing. Yeah, I got green lights all the way to work, and I didn't hit hardly any traffic, and I got there when I left late. Thank you, Jesus. And I think it's just a wonderful, nice little moment that you can have, and acknowledging God there with you.
Sure. Acknowledging Him and having an attitude of gratitude is huge. And oftentimes, the discipline can be very difficult at first, really, because you may not be accustomed to thinking of God all throughout the day. And challenging yourself to draw your mind back toward Him once an hour can feel just huge. It can feel like a really big task. Hey, it's a great goal to set for yourself, because then where your mind would want to wander and drift into the sorrowful place, you command your soul to come back to the godly place, to the holy place, and to behold the beauty of God and to worship Him for who He is. The Word tells us to put on a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. And that garment of praise sounds just like that. It sounds like a lot of gratitude. And there are moments when you honestly may feel like, because we're talking about depression, I don't feel grateful for anything. It's time to shake it off. Do you want to be well? If your faintest whisper is a yes in that, then this is how you're going to do it. And excusing yourself out of this is just not acceptable if you want to be well. And begin thanking God. It's a simple thing. You don't even have to do it out loud. But just begin thanking Him. I thank You for my hands. If you can't find one thing to thank Him for, thank Him for parts of your body which are so intricately woven and made. It's crazy. It's amazing. It's a crazy, wonderful love that has fashioned you and designed you and created you. I mean, amazing. What it takes just for your eyes to work is unfathomable to me. For your lungs to work, for your heart to keep beating, and you're not commanding them to do so. For your ears to work. I mean, it is amazing how the human body works, and being grateful for the things that you have. And if that's the only thing you can begin thanking God for, and then some of you who are listening are saying, well, I don't have a hand, or I'm in a hospital bed because I'm feeling sick. What can you still praise Him for? Maybe one of the things you need to praise Him for is how He's going to deliver you out of the sickness. Extend your faith and quit walking around as if you are an unbeliever, and honestly own the life of being a believer of Jesus, a believer of His resurrection power, a believer that He is who He says He is, and He will do what He says He will do. The time of apathy must come to an end. You can do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to talk about getting out of that pit.
Matters of the Heart radio show is a part of the only Christian radio station in Pakistan. Miss Wendy has the opportunity to share the gospel message there, and you have the opportunity to help. For a donation of any amount, you can help her to continue to bring this ministry to the people of Pakistan. For a donation of only $6, they will receive a Bible in their own native language of Urdu. Simply go to mattersoftheheartradio.org and click on the donate button today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org. You're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with your host, Miss Wendy. We'd love to hear from you today. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in the player located on mattersoftheheartradio.org, or you can also reach out to us on our Facebook page at Matters of the Heart Radio. Now, here's your host, Miss Wendy.
Welcome back to Matters of the Heart radio show. We're talking today about depression and choosing to shake off disappointments in life. I want you to know that you do not have to live in the pit of depression. And if you do, it's by your permission. You may have to fight really hard, and it may be one of the biggest fights of your life, but you can fight. God has not abandoned you. He has not forsaken you, and He will help you to overcome. So here are some practical tools to help you come out of that pit of depression. One is practicing the presence of God, like I talked about earlier. Cognitively bringing the Lord to mind, His holiness, His righteousness, His goodness, His love, and focusing on that for 1 minute out of every hour. Try it. Do your best. When you're able to master that, go for once every 30 minutes. When you're able to master that, go for once every quarter. Challenging, huh? But oh, it's so worth it. Before you know it, your labors are not laborsome. When you begin to offer up the work that you have to do, and you do it literally unto the Lord, He's worthy of every difficult thing you have to go through. He is worthy of it all. And to be able to yield back to Him something, an offering of your time, an offering of your affection, an offering of your mental space, your attention. Such a wonderful thing. He's so loving, and He loves it when we draw our attention toward Him. Another great thing to do is, obviously, if you're really suffering, I do want you to go see a doctor and get on medication. If you're very much anti-medication, there are alternative methods you can take. Maybe go see a naturopath doctor and have them put you on some herbal supplements so that you are feeling better. And you have something to just kind of give you a boost to overcome that very difficult place that you're in. Writing is also very therapeutic and very private. Sometimes in the pit of depression, you have a desire to be heard, yet you do not feel like someone can understand. Okay, write. Because when you do that, you allow those things that are trapped inside to come out, and they need to come out. The burden needs to be eased some. And then I want to encourage you, once you've written, and you may think, I don't know if I can write that long, go ahead and type, do what you need to do. Lay your hands on what you wrote and ask God to come into that place of your heart that's hurting. That very place that you've poured out on those pages of paper. If you invite Him, He will come and offer the pain up to Him. He knows so well why you're hurting, and the whys behind the whys, the whos. He knows the reason that you need to have hope, the joys that are still yet to come. He knows them all, and He only longs to be invited by you. I also want to encourage you to exercise. I know that may seem like one of the hardest things to even fathom. These are all challenging things, but they are all powerful and effective tools for coming out of the pit. Exercise. You may not want to get off of the couch or out of your bed. So, that's what I have to say. So, you don't have to feel like it in order to do it. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't even ask yourself if you want to do it. Get up and do it anyway. Take a 15-minute walk minimum. If it's too cold outside, if it's raining, find another place to walk. But get out. Get out and walk and begin getting yourself in a place where your heart is pumping. Those endorphins can be released. Preferably there's sunshine outside so you can soak up that vitamin D, and it will help you. It is not pie in the sky to say that exercise helps. It's real and it helps. Do not ask yourself, do I feel like getting up to do this? Just get up and do it. Another really good thing to do is take a shower. Sometimes people have a hard time wanting to just bathe because they feel so down. And there's something that happens when people take a shower. Sometimes it brings about more tears because there's water falling there. But most of the time, coming out clean, putting on clean clothes, just gives a little bit more room, or a little bit more breathing room. It has to do a lot with the psyche and the washing and the cleansing. It's a powerful thing, and that's not something that many people want to do when they feel like they're in the pit, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. Another thing I want to encourage you to do is, yes, get out and talk with friends, or at least let a friend or two know that you're really hurting. You don't have to go into all of the details, but you can say, I'm really hurting. Please pray for me. The power of prayer is amazing. And sometimes you can feel like you're in a place where you can't even really pray for yourself. Okay, who do you know that can pray? Who can you trust to guard what's in your heart? Do it. Reach out. Today is do it. Today is pick up your mat and walk. It is get up. It is do something about it. The do something about it day. Another thing that I want you to consider, I'm going to take it a little bit deeper, as if you were in my office, is this. Sometimes what depression is it is suppressed anger. And I want you to ask yourself, am I angry? If you tend to have a personality that's more joyful, more peaceful, and you're not really one to get angry a whole lot, sometimes depression in your life is really the fruit of anger. But because anger is not really a go-to for you, it's easier for you to get depressed in your own choosing, sort of, that as you begin to question yourself, am I angry? Oh, you're probably going to find the oil well there, and it's going to gush, 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 gush with all kinds of stuff. Because you may find out that actually inside of yourself, you're angry, very, very, very angry. Seeing someone who can help you work through that anger is essential. Because it's not your go-to, because it's not a place that you tend to go to very often, maybe because you don't want to be perceived as an angry person. Maybe you had angry parents, or you've been married to someone who's angry and you hate the way that feels and it comes across, so you do whatever it takes to not demonstrate that behavior or generate that kind of feeling. Depression will sneak up because you're trying to avoid something that you really are angry about. And you need to really examine what you're angry about. And then create a plan. Because I'm giving you all of these tools. Create a plan for how you can overcome. If you feel like you cannot create that plan on your own, it's okay. It's all right. But reach out to someone who has some good sense about them and ask them to help you. Can you help me create a plan? And as you're going over it, some things may feel like the steps are too big. I can't do that. That's too big. That's too fast. Okay, then let's back it up. But set small, attainable goals for yourself to help move that mile marker of success. For some of you, that plan looks like, I'm going to get out and walk 15 minutes a day. And every day when you work your plan, you will find yourself getting whole and healthy, bit by bit by bit by bit. But just laying there will never give you the life that you're really dreaming of. You see, here's the thing. Just because someone's suffering with depression does not mean that they do not dream or long for a better life. In reality, that's one of the things that brings them down, is that they really are longing deeply for a better life. And they just need help coming up with a plan, a way to formulate how to obtain the life they're wanting. Depression is real. And if you are the one loving someone who is feeling depressed, taking good care of yourself is important so that you do not become overly frustrated with them, because sometimes you can just want to say, shake it off, get over it, come on, let's go. And it may not make sense to you for why they just don't or they can't. It's okay. Make sure that you have a good pool of friends yourself. Make sure that you too are practicing the presence of God. Make sure that you too are journaling your thoughts. Make sure that you too are getting the exercise that you need. Don't leave them behind. It's none of the words I'm saying. Don't just go on with your life and forget about them, ignore them. But don't feel like your whole entire world has to stop. They also need to see life going on in a good way. And you can't take them there if you're not taking good care of yourself. You too are valuable. And loving someone who suffers with depression can be very, very hard. It can be a very lovely, a very lonely place as well. It's okay. You're not the only one, but make sure that you get involved in a community that you can share your frustrations with, that can lift you up, and that you can get out and go and have a good time with yourself. You want to make sure that you are healthy as you can possibly be, so that you can continue to help your loved one who's suffering with the sorrow as well. Beth Moore says she has a great book that I love called Get Out of That Pit. And I love that book. And she talks about in that book not hanging up pictures in that pit and wallowing in self-pity. Self-pity is one of the favorite companions of depression. Poor me. Poor me. Poor me. I want to challenge you to begin to say, blessed me. How blessed I am. I am blessed. I am blessed. Try to fight the poor me mentality, because that poor me, how can this be happening to me, is only going to suck the life out of you more. Self-pity is self-destruction, and it will get you nowhere. It doesn't mean you're not hurting. Yes, you're hurting. Yes, something bad has happened. Or yes, you need to get your medication. But wallowing in self-pity doesn't help anything. It doesn't help it at all. Poor me, poor me, poor me. No, excuse me. You are bought with the blood of the Lamb. You are wholly loved, wholly accepted, approved of, chosen. There's not room for poor me. There's room for, I can't wait to see what God's going to do yet. And though I can't imagine what it is, help me, God, help my unbelief. You're not the only one to struggle with that. You know, David often said that he encouraged himself in the Lord. He had to command his soul. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, and forget not his benefits. He's being chased. He's been, the attempt of murder was real on his life. And he said, bless the Lord. He had to choose, and we all have to choose. Okay, so what if it's your loved one and it's not you? And you're saying they're not about to bless the Lord. They're feeling sorry for themselves. They won't take a shower. They won't leave the room. They go to work and they come home and they lock themselves in the room. Bless the Lord. Change the environment. Put on worship music in your house. You know, God inhabits the praises of his people. So when the praises go up, even if you're not the one singing it, the presence of the Lord comes down. And we talked earlier about in the presence of the Lord is fullness of joy, and there is also peace. So do what it takes to cultivate the environment that invites the presence of God. Don't live with all the shutters closed. Do not participate with the pity party, in other words. Be the difference maker. You don't have to be crazy and obnoxious and rowdy and loud, but love gently and choose to turn the steering wheel to go down a different path. Life is valuable. Everyone who is alive has value and worth. Sometimes we need help finding it or to find our way again. And sometimes we're trying to help someone find it. I want you to remember today that no matter which side of the road you're on, the Lord is there with you to help you. It's not something that's fake. It's something that is real. When you're drowning, reach out your hand. It's real. It's not fake. You are an overcomer. through Christ Jesus, your Lord, you will overcome. You will sing again. You will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Thanks for listening to Matters of the Heart radio show today. It's been a joy talking about depression and loving those who are depressed.
You've been listening to Matters of the Heart radio live. If you enjoyed listening to the show today, we ask that you support it with your gifts. The show could not be made possible without generous contributions from our community of faithful listeners, and in order to make it possible to remain on the air, we need your help. The show is made possible for you and with you, so please consider making a donation today. Please visit the show's website, mattersoftheheartradio.org, and click the donation button at the bottom of the homepage. Learn about partnership opportunities and corporate sponsorship with us to order a signed copy of Miss Wendy's book, Healing Waters. To schedule a counseling session with Ms. Wendy, go to refreshingtimescounselingcenter.com. Visit us on Facebook, and please don't forget to tune in next week with Ms. Wendy on Matters of the Heart Radio Live.